A weekday morning in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. Tall new office buildings shadow the streets below. New commercial opportunities are bringing a growing workforce and street life back to the center of the city. At lunchtime, workers congregate at Alice Park Plaza, part of a new downtown complex that includes a hotel, a restored theater, a convention center, and a renovated civic auditorium. The open spaces of the plaza are a favorite destination for noontime socializing and occasional entertainment. But when the day is over, most workers commute to homes in neighborhoods beyond the center city. These pedestrians are the exception. They live on Quality Hill, a rejuvenated residential neighborhood within walking distance of downtown Kansas City. The public and private sectors have invested together to restore this historic area and to provide mixed-income housing opportunities adjacent to the central business district. At the turn of the century, Quality Hill was one of Kansas City's wealthiest neighborhoods with topography and demographics that mimicked Boston's Beacon Hill. Situated atop a steep bluff at the western edge of downtown, the neighborhood began to decline by the 1930s, when foul odors from stockyards, now located below, drove affluent residents and businesses out of the area. The stockyards closed after World War II, but the neighborhood never rebounded.
Many of the buildings had been vacant, deteriorated, and were just housing transient type of population. Many of the buildings were being burned in the winter by people who were trying to keep warm. They were losing a large number of structures there in that area through demolition. The area was perceived as being crime-ridden, and it was important for the city to develop this area within the downtown loop to bring back a housing market into the downtown business district, and also to revitalize a major section of the downtown area.
McCormack Baron and Associates, developers of urban mixed-income projects, was asked to study downtown housing potential. Their vision of a redeveloped Quality Hill convinced community leaders to concentrate resources there.
It's probably less being visionary than it is just being optimistic about the potential for reclaiming cities, retail services, housing, a sense of security, and a sense of desirable kinds of places to live. And that's the kind of thing that we try to recreate in areas that have become dysfunctional.
He saw what no one in the community had seen within this blight, and he saw the opportunity to create something unique adjacent to the core city with the defined borders, and something that appeared to be doable in a relatively short period of time.
We felt that if we revitalize this part of the downtown, it would have an unusually positive effect, or through the process of contagion, we would have a good spillover effect. So as a result, in this old historic area, which overlooks the bluff and overlooks the stockyard, the city decided to spend considerable amount of money.
Project planning for Phase 1 began in 1982. The 8.5-acre site is 20% of the original Quality Hill, a designated historic district. The first phase consists of 23 buildings. 13 are rehabs with facades faithful to original designs and interiors reconfigured to suit contemporary lifestyles. 10 new buildings are largely residential and designed to blend with the older ones. 2 parking garages and several small lots serve the new community. Not all buildings within the area belong to the project. Some owners rehabbed their own properties. The asking price for others was more than the developers were willing to pay. Phase 2, completed in 1989, consists of the restored Cordova Hotel and the new Chateau. The two buildings provide 49 units of below-market rate housing. When there is sufficient market demand, a third phase will add an additional 50,000 square feet for commercial and convenience retail. Phase 1 provided 363 one- and two-bedroom apartments and townhouse units, 56,000 square feet of office, and 8,500 square feet of retail space.
We had to create a certain number of units in order to make the project economically feasible on the one hand, and on the other, we had to provide enough off-street parking, and we had to integrate the design in a way that the project didn't become too dense or too high in terms of costs, and also in terms of overwhelming the standard building height that was very evident in the historic district.
Architectural style and scale were derived from older buildings, including heights, setbacks, materials, and ornamentation. Land acquisition took more than a year. There were lengthy negotiations with the local entrepreneur who had assembled many of the properties but lacked resources for redevelopment. But the biggest hurdle was financing.
Out of cash flow. Quality Hill, very simply described, was a $40 million project and had the ability to service $11 million of conventional debt at a tax-exempt bond rate that was available to us at the time that we closed the project. Everything else, the difference between $40 million and $11 million, had to be covered with grants or very soft loans.
Private sector investors were attracted by the historic preservation and low-income housing tax credits. Both were applicable to Quality Hill, and $11 million of equity was raised through a limited partnership offering. $4 million was contributed by a consortium of 17 local businesses, banks, and foundations. The consortium was led by the Hall Family Foundation, headquartered in Kansas City, which gave $2 of the $4 million as a program-related investment.
A foundation is required to give 5% of its assets every year. That normally means to charitable 501c3 organizations. However, they can make investments which further their charitable purpose and have it count against that 5% in the year that they make it. As we are paid back on Quality Hill, we will then get a return of those monies and be able to use them for other charitable projects.
The city provided $11 million in first mortgage revenue bonds and tax abatements for 25 years. In addition, the city acquired the land for $5.5 million and conveyed the site to the developer at far below cost, paid for relocation of 200 households and 40 businesses, provided low-interest loans, and gave $2 million for public improvements. But there were many disagreements.
Most of the disagreements were in terms of reuses of the money to come back. Those were in disagreements. How we should do it, disagreement as to what the level of city's participation should be, disagreement over things such as how we deliver the land, whether or not we had a responsibility to deliver the land in a buildable condition. That was a principal disagreement. Or whether or not our writing the land down by several $1 million was in of itself adequate.
After lengthy negotiations, it was agreed that investment returns could be reinvested in the project or could be used by public agencies to support citywide minority programs or to provide low-interest second mortgages to qualified applicants seeking home ownership. Objections to the use of public funds were subsequently diffused, and community-wide support facilitated an urban development action grant of $6.5 million from the federal government.
There is basically a first mortgage lender who's a local bank. We are in a second mortgage position. The UDAG finds itself in a third mortgage position, and then there are equity players. As those people get paid back, the funds are distributed in lots of different ways, including some mortgage write-downs, including reinvestment in the area, including monies that are available to the local minority community.
McCormack Baron became managing general partner. They received an upfront developer's consultant fee, 1% equity, and 5% of the annual rents for management services. 1/8 of their equity share was allocated to the principal landowner as a purchase fee. Paybacks to investors come mostly from property sales. Planning, acquisition, and financing took 3 years. New construction and renovation began in 1985. The Progress Club sits in the very center of Quality Hill, and like many of the historic properties, was restored with the help of old photographs. Built in the Chateauesque style in 1893, the building was originally a prestigious social club and then a union hall. The decorative roof and windows were restored to the original design, and the building now houses a fitness club operated by the YMCA. The period exterior is a noteworthy contrast to the remodeled contemporary interior. Across the street is another Victorian-era structure, the Virginia Hotel. The building had been damaged long ago by a severe storm.
When it was finally rebuilt, it was rebuilt with a flat roof, and it was whitewashed and had no front porch. It was a rooming house, and then ultimately it was boarded up and had not been used for many years when we came to Quality Hill.
With its original profile restored, the Virginia Hotel has been renovated for office use. Inside, the former lobby with its broad staircase has become a reception area. A new atrium links the main building with the smaller, originally separate structure. When a tenant could not be found, the Hall Family Foundation made a $2 million contribution to the Missouri Industrial Development Commission, which then bought the hotel and adjacent 2 buildings. This transaction made special state tax credits available, and the United Way was able to lease the property at favorable terms. The Coates House, built in 1866, was one of the most elegant hotels west of the Mississippi, but had declined over the years into a transient boarding house. After a devastating fire in 1978, the building was saved from demolition by local preservationists who maintained a special interest in the landmark property. The Coates House has been renovated to accommodate a mix of uses. There are ground floor retail and office spaces, with rental apartments above. Elaborate iron supports and metal ceilings on the sidewalk overhang artfully recreate the original exterior. A side-entered lobby is used only by apartment residents. Marble floors and a staircase trimmed in heavy wood incorporate new and restored materials. The remaining 10 older buildings in Phase 1 and the Cordova Hotel in Phase 2 were all remodeled for residential use only. During renovation, unforeseen problems were often encountered, which required costly solutions and financial renegotiations.
We had problems of asbestos that we discovered in the floor joists in one building. We had clay tile floors in another that simply couldn't withstand the penetrations for new plumbing, and we had to completely rebuild those floors in an entirely new system.
Abandoned for more than 20 years, the Cordova had suffered severe structural damage and required extensive and expensive renovations. The building was converted into 34 apartments. All units rent below market rate and are set aside for qualified households. As with all the rehab buildings, the Cordova retains unique vestiges of the past. High ceilings, thick walls, and large openings with wood trim are typical. Each rehab unit is unique. All have been modernized. New sprinkler systems and electric utilities were installed. Redesigned kitchens have new appliances, and each apartment has a washer and dryer. Attempts to modernize older floor plans have created some awkward reconfigurations. These renovated apartment buildings have had the main entrances relocated to the side, but architecturally, the facades have remained the same, confusing visitors and disappointing purists who feel that doors should remain doors and not become windows. 9 of the 10 new buildings are strictly residential, apartment buildings or townhouses. All two-story townhouse units have bay windows and N units have fireplaces. All are market rate. The configuration on the townhouse units is unusual. Each unit has a one-floor garden apartment a few steps below grade, with a pair of mirror-image two-story units above it. The two-story units offer a conventional layout. The living room is in the front, separated by a small half-bath from the kitchen and dining area, located in the rear. The bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms are upstairs. Two-story units have back decks, with room for a barbecue grill and 2 chairs, but there is little privacy. Many decks overlook parking lots, utilities, and trash containers, some of which get foraging visits from street people. Parking is at a premium on Quality Hill. Each residential unit is allocated 1 off-street parking space. More than 600 parking spaces are located in 2 garages and several small lots, but demand still exceeds supply. Parking garages are secured by wire enclosures at the street level. Parking lots are gated and accessed by keycard. The security reflects the need to create a new neighborhood image after the years of neglect. Other attempts at image changing are visible in the streetscape improvements insisted on by the developer and provided by the city. Brick pavers, newly planted trees surrounded by iron grates, black iron fences topping low brick walls alongside new sidewalks. Prominent posts flank the gateways to Quality Hill and mark the transition from older to revitalized areas. Despite some opposition from city officials to changing the downtown street grid, traffic patterns have been altered. One-way, high-speed corridors have been redesigned into slower, two-way streets with median strips to discourage commuter traffic. Quality Hill has evidently found a market niche. Occupancy rate is usually above 90%, with the turnover rate averaging 35%, claimed to be low for the immediate area. Most tenants are single or childless couples, with an average income of $27,000. Market rate, 1-bedroom units of 700 to 950 square feet rent from $400 to $600 per month. 2-bedroom units from 850 to 1,300 square feet rent from $500 to $800 per month. The affordable units, which are predominantly in Phase 2, rent for $300 to $380 per month and are set aside for households with less than 60% of the local median income of $37,500. All leases are for a year. 20 townhomes and 10 flats were converted to condominiums 2 years after completion and sold through a local broker. Sales ranged from $85,000 to $100,000 per unit, and all but 2 sold quickly. Despite the leasing success, Quality Hill is still a neighborhood in transition, and nearby amenities and services are still limited. The new Cathedral building houses the development office, a small health clinic, and a pharmacy which stocks convenience store items but cannot compensate for the lack of a nearby food market. Efforts to bring a grocery store into the neighborhood have so far been unsuccessful. Urban development projects like Quality Hill, which involve complex, multi-layered financing and substantial rehabilitation, incur unforeseen expenses, delays, and ongoing negotiations.
Winning over the community did take some effort. Establishing the credibility of the developer took some time. Getting all the financing partners together and in agreement took some time. Getting the developer to finally agree on what the deal was, as opposed to changing it constantly, took a great deal of time and effort. Bringing all the city officials along was not easy.
The perseverance of community leaders has apparently been rewarded. Preservationists have witnessed the rehabilitation of more than a dozen buildings and the restoration of an important part of Kansas City's architectural history. Civic leaders have provided downtown housing for workers, Occupancy is high, and the mixed-income community is stabilized. More than 400 new households are now living in the area. City officials are achieving synergistic goals. Large homes on Quality Hill, which have long been neglected, are gradually being restored and converted into small offices. And nearby old warehouses are being adapted for commercial and residential use.
We've been the catalyst for real social and physical change in this particular, in downtown. I think people are now living in downtown again. People enjoy having a place where they can walk to live and a place where they can walk to work. I think it gives the city an entirely different image.
I think it's essentially reclaimed a very significant portion of the downtown of Kansas City. And it has created new housing opportunities. And I think it is a demonstration of the kind of success that can be achieved when you have a strong coalition of public and private interests in a local community who set out to get something done and do it.